Well, Chris and Noel, welcome back. We've had a good opportunity to network and talk with government colleagues over the break. So you'll be glad to know that I'm not going to speak for very long. I'm going to hand it to Mick quite quickly, but I'm going to provide a little bit of an introduction to Mick's session. So I know that in the past, when I've introduced Mick, I've talked about his illustrious and varied career, from teacher to head teacher, director of education, to policy advisor for governments. Today, however, we've invited Mick not only because of his wealth of knowledge and experience across the education sector, but also because of his own personal knowledge and experience of schools across our region that has been developed over a number of years. Over the last 18 months, Mick has been supporting us to work with clusters of schools to consider how we develop a shared understanding of learner progress in respect of the curriculum for Wales. And in doing so, has first-hand experience of both the opportunities that this curriculum provides, but also some of the challenges that we're experiencing as we move through. Obviously, Mick's going to provide us with some insights into that today. Now, the main focus for Mick today is to support governors in understanding their role in developing curriculum for Wales. And in doing so, Mick will draw both on the policy guidance produced by Welsh Government with practical insight into how governors can develop their understanding of their roles and discharge their responsibilities in that regard. And probably an awful lot besides. So please join me in welcoming Mick to this day. So thanks, Mick.
Look, it's a delight to be with you, and I hope the next little while does help you as governors to think thoroughly about the job that you're doing in terms of the curriculum for Wales and the wonderful work you do to try and make learning as good as it can be for children in all of our schools. And look, I don't know who's here really. I sort of wandered around saying hello to some people, and I've met somebody who said, I've been a governor for 3 years, and I'm a governor in the school that my parents came to, the school that I went to, the school that my granddad built. You know, and you just think this is one perspective. And then I met another person who said, I've been a governor for just 3 years, and suddenly I find I'm the chair, and I'm waiting to see at the next meeting whether I'm confirmed as the chair. And I said, are you enjoying it? She said, yeah, loving it. Yeah. Then I met somebody who said, I've been a governor for 30 years. And when I was first a governor, you had to stand up at the meeting if you wanted to speak. I thought, that's a good way of shutting people up, isn't it? And she said, the thing is, I've been 30 years at it, and I still don't know what's going on. Now, look, I've been in education all my career. I've been in all sorts of jobs, as James just said. I've been a chief education officer. The truth is, most of us, most of the time, don't quite know what's going on. We're really trying to make sense of it. And one of the joys, I think, of working in the classroom is making sense of uncertainty, trying to grapple with uncertainty and make sure that you get the best from it. If you're a child in a classroom, typically you're trying to make sense of uncertainty. You wonder what 2 3s are until somebody tells you. And you hope you can remember till tomorrow when they ask you again. You're really trying to make sense of it as you go along. I mean, just, do you mind giving me a flavour? Put your hand up if you're a governor in a secondary school. Just have a quick squint around the room and have a look. It's got a big proportion. I've talked to several governing body conferences in different countries, and actually the proportion of secondary there is much higher than most of those. Primary people? Okay. I'm not remembering everybody, but I've got a flavour of it. Special schools, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Bound to be fewer, aren't there? But it's good to see everybody sort of represented. Anybody from schools that cope with youngsters who are in real trouble in mainstream schools and has to be somewhere else? Alternative provision? Yeah, a couple of ways for that. Now, what I hope I do in talking to you is give you a flavour of some of the things that you can do to try and move the curriculum for Wales forward. I just want to start by saying it's 9 years since Graham Donaldson produced the report called Successful Futures. And if you haven't looked at it lately, it would be really good to read it again, Because what Graham said in Successful Futures was that Wales needs to think again about how it runs its schooling system for children. He'd done a big consultation talking to probably every interest group there was in Wales, and he made many, many, many recommendations. And he said, if you want children in Wales to be fit for the future, have the best lives possible, make the most difference for themselves and do the best they can for their community, their country and the world, we need to think again. The old system is running out of road, it's running out of steam, and we need to think differently. And the first thing he said was that we need to be clear what we want for our children and then build a curriculum that will make that happen. But if that curriculum is going to work, we also have to think about how we get our teachers to perform differently. We have to work out how we get our new teachers coming in better trained. We have to look at our inspection regime and say, how does that support learning rather than get in the way of it? How do we structure our support for school improvement? What do we do for governance to make them really powerful in the system? And the other thing he says in Successful Futures, 9 years ago it was published, 9 years ago, he said it will take 20 years to see change really take shape and make a difference. So if you're in a governing body, in a meeting that says, oh dear, not another challenge, it isn't another challenge, it's the same challenge, but it's coming at us in different ways. And there was never any doubt that this would take a long while and would be really, really challenging to do, but it would be worth it in the end. In England, I'm sorry, I would do a lot of work there. I do a lot of work in other countries as well, so I feel better about it. But in England, they've now started talking about children having additional learning needs. That is a really interesting thing. Not special needs like they used to, but children with additional learning needs. And it's really fascinating because some of the things we're doing in Wales are making people in the rest of the UK and across the globe think afresh about how they run education. I was at a conference in Valencia just a couple of weeks ago, and people were coming up to me from different nations talking about, we understand you do some work in Wales. I said, yeah, I try to help in Wales quite a lot. And they talk about, is it true that what Welsh schools are doing is this? Is the way that the Welsh schools are doing this really going to take shape and move us forward? Are the Welsh really reviewing these things? And I think it's often underestimated within the country just how much impact the reforms you're making are having. So I just want to, during the next hour, share a few thoughts and a few ideas to try and help governments. I know how hard it is. It's, as was said earlier, it's a voluntary job. You do it because you care. And half the time you can't tell what's going on. I sort of understand that. I am a governor. I'm a governor in 3 schools. And I've got that bag of experience that Jen has mentioned. I have to tell you, I sit in governors' meetings and think, goodness me, can somebody explain this to me? I've been in charge of millions of pounds of budgets at times, and still I struggle to make sense of it. And sometimes I know that people are sort of playing the sort of dance of the 7 veils and not quite telling me what the truth is. And it's really hard, and because we're volunteers and they're really professionals, and you've got to say, hang on a minute. So it's really difficult. But we're going to have a look. Is that okay? I like to root things with children, so I thought you might enjoy this for a minute. I'll just show it you and just see what you think. I was in a school, this is in England, a school in England in year 6, and it was the start of the day, and the teacher for some reason had given every child a post-it note and said, write down a message you would like to send to the world. Now I thought it was a bizarre thing to do, to be honest, a bit like Twitter really, sort of shouting into the void and hoping. So I don't know why they'd done it, but I was walking around having a look, and this lovely year 6 boy, that's 11-year-old, had written, Manchester United are better than any other team in the Premier League, and everyone needs to And then he'd had a better idea, so he crossed it out. He used a ruler as well, couldn't you see? He used a ruler to cross it out. And then he'd written his better idea down below. And I thought it might make you sort of think. If it's your last day alive, then spend it in school because it feels like an eternity. It made me laugh like that as well. I thought, it's really funny, isn't it? And it is funny. Now, I looked at it, and I didn't talk to the child about it, because you don't want to sort of, what have you written now? I can't believe he thought of it. He's 11 years old, he didn't think of that. My guess is, I sort of conject, that he'd been at some family celebration recently, a wedding or a christening, or a thing where the family get together, and you know how they split up and they sit in little groups. And when you're 11, you love being on the tag end of the grown-ups, don't you? A few blokes sitting around with, enjoying a chat, and it's sort of sitting there, and you can imagine somebody saying, if it's your last day of life, spend it shopping. Feels like an eternity. Everybody laughs. Or fishing, or dancing, it doesn't matter what it was. And everybody laughs, and the little lad sits there and goes, "Oh, flipping out, that made him laugh. I'll have a go at that." And this was his chance. Now, whatever he wrote it, there's a sort of little message in that, isn't there? Because when we say things feel like an eternity, we usually mean we want it to stop, because it's going on forever. But actually the literal meaning is that it's going to go on and on and on. And wouldn't it be lovely if the children in our schools, in our classrooms, sat there thinking, I am so enjoying this work that we're doing in science, I just don't want it to stop. I am so engaged in this geography, I just want to carry on with this. This maths is so enthralling, I can't wait to do it again tomorrow. And somehow, our education system doesn't always do that for children. And we can say to them, well, we all have to do things we don't like, but not 5 lessons a day of it, not 5 days a week, 10 days a term, really pushing it on and taking it from there. So I'm going to give you some perspectives on how it is governors can get underneath the skin of the school in a positive sense to try and make a difference to children's learning so that they do want to be there. We heard about the challenge of attendance, and one of the real challenges for us in the attendance thing is to face the fact that several thousand children across the UK are not going to school because they can't be bothered and it's not attractive enough. The school should be like a magnet, pulling them in, they can't resist it. They're desperate to be there to learn. And whatever it is, whether it's holidays and illness, there's quite a lot of that takes some of that attendance problem away. But actually we've got to stop talking about an attendance problem and say we've got an absence problem. There are children who are not finding their learning attractive. And that's in successful futures. That's what Graham Donaldson was talking about all those years ago, saying, come on, let's make this curriculum work for our children. Now, you've been here for quite a while this morning, you've listened to people, and I thought you might just like to think about perspectives in terms of curriculum for Wales. And in this room, and in your schools, there'll be people who are quite buoyant about where the curriculum's going. It's late, we've been waiting for this for a generation and more. And some of us are saying, oh, goodness me, it is daunting, it's challenging. So I just put these statements together and thought I'd give you on your tables, perhaps in 2s and 3s, not right across the table, just a couple of minutes, no longer, just to say, if you dropped in on our governing body meeting or in our school and listened to us talking about curriculum for Wales, we'd be talking about the 3rd one down on there, or we'd be talking about the bottom one, or we'd be thinking about the 5th one down, or the top ones where we are. And we fluctuate between number 1 and number 7. I should have numbered them, it would be a lot easier to point, wouldn't it? I am sorry, I've only just thought of it, and it's too late now. So how about just sort of 2.5 minutes I'll give you. In 2s and 3s, don't try and have a table talk because you just leave people out. Where are you at the minute? Where are we? And how do we feel about it? Off you go, have a talk. 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you very much. I said 2 minutes, that was actually 3.5. And I know how many slides are coming, so we are going to keep going. But I haven't got time to go around the room saying, what did people say and where are you? But if I could sort of be sort of, I don't know what the word is, clever enough, I don't know, to give you advice, and I hesitantly give it. A good thing to do at a governing body meeting in the near future might be just to take that, put it on the screen or on the wall in a piece of paper, and give your governor colleagues a chance to take stock and talk openly about how you're feeling about how things are going in school. My experience is governing body meetings have got very efficient, and there is a lot of paper, and we move from agenda point to agenda point. We're really busy clarifying things, and people get good at doing meetings. Sometimes it's easier to take the pressure off and just talk about it and get people's honest opinion. And one serious person in that is the head teacher and leadership of the school that's represented. Where do they think they are compared with where we think? And what do we see as the real issues going forward? And that won't solve anything, but it will get out in the open just where we think we are as a governing body going forward. Now, moving forward, what I'm going to do is talk about the guidance, which is on the website, and you can read it, and you've all sort of been helped towards it by EAS. The things, the items, the issues that the governing body has a responsibility for in terms of curriculum for Wales. So I'm just going to go through them and then sort of give you some background and some ideas of things you might take forward. So if you take this first one, the head teacher and the governing body must and jointly adopt their curriculum arrangements and assessment arrangements. And the big thing at the bottom is record the arrangements. So that is where you've got to be official and formal and do that. But it's an agreement between the head teacher and the governing body. Now it's hard for head teachers because they then have to get an agreement between their staff, the teaching staff, and themselves, and agreement between different departments in a secondary school or different phases in a primary school about what we stand for. And sometimes that means looking again at what we do in our school and saying, where should we go? Simply saying, oh, well, we've got the old curriculum and basically it's okay, so we carry it on, is really not what you want. What you really want people to do is to think it through and really go back to first principles. So going back to first principles, these are some of the things that really matter. You know, these are children entering the school, they're 3 and 4 years old, and you look at those lovely faces, and on those faces you can see amusement, curiosity, wonder, delight, and loads of other things as well. Of course, what's causing it is the bubbles, isn't it? If I got bubbles out now and waft them over you, you'll be popping them and blowing them and looking at the colours of the spectrum in the bubble, and you'll be catching it on the back of your hand and watching to see whether it splatters. Because bubbles are irresistible. They are. You don't look at a bubble and say, oh, I've seen a bubble. You know, you just aren't. They're captivating. And what happens when they're irresistible is you can't take your eyes off them. Now, what we want is irresistible learning for children, isn't it? And to try and carry that through the whole of their school career into adulthood. So when children get to 11 and look over the fence into secondary school, you hope that inside them is that sort of amusement, curiosity, enthrallment, all those words that I was using before going forward. And the aim, of course, is to try and get the children to 18, 19 when they finish their school career, so that they are ready to face the world. They're confident in themselves. They're people who can make a difference as they step from school into the bigger world. They're people who are helpful to their family, to their community. They're people who care about their nation, care about the world, think that they can play a proper part, a positive part going forward, whatever that part is. And so what we want is a curriculum that traces their life in school, supports what they do at home, and really gives them the best chance in life. Now, one of the things that Wales has decided is that our curriculum will come at the children in 6 proportionate pieces, and those pieces together will combine to make the best learning these children can get. And you know this, so I'm not going to spend a long while talking about it, but these are the areas of learning experience that will help our children to face the future with confidence. And unusually, compared with any other country other countries in Britain, Wales has really set some purposes for its education system. Now, you know these. The danger is, we say, oh, that was a long while ago. No, it was brought in a long while ago by Graham Donaldson's Successful Futures document as the bedrock of what goes forward, the rocks upon which we will build the curriculum. I always think this is 4 nouns and 8 adjectives. And I think you could move them about so that you have ambitious individuals, you have healthy citizens, you have informed contributors, you have enterprising learners, you have capable contributors. And if you went around your school, would you see children who are enterprising contributors in classrooms? If you walked around your school and you went in the PE department or the art department or the business studies department or in the infants or reception, would you see confident individuals? Would you see informed citizens? These are the purposes of the curriculum. And that's why we're trying to make learning irresistible as we go forward. Because these children are, we hope, enjoying a curriculum for a future world. Not the current world, not the old world. I was just talking to somebody in the break about the fact that when their parents went to the school, they had inkwells. Right? And it's moved on. Well, thank goodness it has, because we all used to come home in a mess. But when we've moved it on, is the curriculum, is the learning they're doing, making it good for us? I mean, it's a fantastic world these children are growing up into. This is the winner of the Natural History Photo of the Year competition, as voted for by children. And it's a sort of delightful, lovely picture of a polar bear dropping off to sleep on its ice floe. And of course, the issue is that when the polar bear wakes up, the ice floe would have moved, and it would have moved faster than it did 10 years ago when Graham wrote his report. Because global warming is sucking that ice towards the warmer currents, and gradually that ice will melt. Children know about these things, and they're worried about it. What is global warming doing to us, and where are we taking it? So one lesson in year 4 and another in year 9 won't help them to really understand how they can make a difference to the world in which they live. Global warming leads to this. This is Ironbridge. This is when the water from Wales pours out down the River Severn, and all those towns down in Wales, down the River Severn, suddenly have to make decisions about how to react. And pretty well every year now in Ironbridge, perhaps 2 times a year sometimes, they have to put up this barricade down the side, and you notice it's all covered with plastic? Well, I go in some schools where children are sort of telling me plastic is bad. And I say, not if you live in Ironbridge, it's not. And some plastic's bad, and the way we use plastic, the single-use plastic, and the fact we don't dispose of it properly and we don't reuse it, that's what we've got to eradicate. But if we took all the plastic out of this room today, for a start we wouldn't have much to sit on. There'd be loads and loads of stuff missing, and half our clothes would fall off. So plastic on its own is not bad. What we've got to teach children is to be discerning and thoughtful and reasoned in the way they talk. Have you seen just recently the Iceland volcanoes are going again? There's great fear in the airline industry that they're going to be laid up for weeks like it happened about 10 years ago. But these are real lava flows gushing out of these mountains. And in a sense, it's good to look at the minute. But if you're in Iceland, you're thinking twice about this stuff. I don't know whether you noticed this in the news just 2 weeks ago. This is scrolls from Herculaneum. Herculaneum's a town that's near Pompeii, just under the Mount Vesuvius, that a while ago suffered an enormous eruption and volcanic lava covered their town, and archaeologists discovered these scrolls. And what's happened is that artificial intelligence has been able to read these scrolls, even though they're covered in volcanic lava and have never been, and you can't possibly undo them, and have produced the text that tells you what these people were writing. And what they're writing is, be careful, there's a volcano that's erupting. I made that bit up. I mean, this thing goes around the globe every 90 odd minutes. And often it comes over Wales. how many of our children get out and see it during the school day? While Tim Peake was on it, everybody was talking about the thing. You know, these space travellers are up there finding ways to solve some of the globe's problems through the work they do. Our children could be out there, not on a day like today, but tracking it in the sky, then watching it on their maps, on their iPhone maps and so on, and really understanding how humans have this thing about trying to find a way, trying to find something in the unknown. Only this last month, the first American craft landed on the moon for 50 years. And the aim is for more people to be on the moon in the very near future, and to build a base on the moon. Now, when I was little, the idea that these people were going into space was a sort of partly exciting and partly terrifying thing. Can we capture our children's interest in what's happening in the bigger world as they go forward? How do we teach our children to say, hang on a minute, this is wrong? I go in schools where there is no question that what the teacher says has to be done. How do we help our children to say, hang on a minute, we don't agree with this, or can we do it another way? Because if we don't teach them this, they're growing up to be the sort who say to their own children, you don't have to go to school. It's no good saying it's the rules. What do we do to help our children to understand why we have rules and reasonably protest? I go in schools where they say, we've got a school council for this, and then they bring me the school council to talk to. And I say, what do you do? They say, oh, we get together and we make decisions for the school. And I say, oh, that's lovely. What have you won on? And they say, what do you mean? I say, well, you know, where have you sort of, as a school council, said to the leadership of the school, can we change that? Or can we make our school better by doing this? We think you should do this. They say, oh, it don't work like that, mate. The teachers give you two choices, and you debate them, and then you make a decision. And I think, it's not a decision, is it? That's a constrained decision. How do we get our children to really think, I've got a voice and I want to be heard? Because I go around schools and I see the big strap lines on the wall saying everybody matters here. But when I have a big idea, you say, oh, it doesn't matter that much. You know, what matters is what we say. This is one of the iconic photos of the 21st century. This is those children in the cave in the Philippines. The moment the diver came up and took, you know, with his light on and took the photo. They'd been in that cave for 21 days. Their lights must have gone very quickly. I don't know the reality of it. But can you imagine what those children were thinking moments before that photo? They would be sitting in there. Do you think they were in silence? Or do you think they were talking? Do you think they were whimpering? Do you think they'd gone past all that? They've been without food for days. Can you think of the smell? Can you think what it must have been like to be in that enclosed space, thinking, how long have we got left? Now we've got to get our children to think about other people, to be empathetic, to be wondering about other people. And that's a really big challenge. And this is an extreme version. People rush from all over the world to get these children out once they knew they were safe. But can you imagine how the diver felt when they emerged? This notion of spirit, these children held their spirit. I don't know whether you noticed just the other week, just the week before last, the top was put on the Notre Dame steeple. And you remember it burning down, that horrendous fire? And for people who have that faith, or people who just believe in the human spirit, that's quite an achievement. That steeple has been built in the same techniques as people used in medieval times, using the same tools, and they have built it in very few years compared with the many, many years it took to build it in the first place. And that notion of what is it in human spirit that wants to recover from things, that wants to protect themselves, really wants to take you forward, is really worth discussing with our children. Our children have to believe there's some purpose, some sense of bigness in this. This idea that this is profound, this is deep, this is more than get that done. More than get this done so I can mark it. This is grappling with big ideas. And what Graham talked about in Successful Futures was the curriculum has to be about big ideas. And we have to keep children understanding that the big ideas matter. And that we do these small lessons to put them together to make the big ideas. And if it's just perfunctory, I've got to do all these lessons so that I get an exam, that's one big idea. But if the exam doesn't fit anything, where do we go from there? Of course, I've shown you lovely pictures mainly, but there's another side to it as well. And the curriculum makes a difference to some of the risks that children face in life. So I've just put this together at the minute. It's things that are facing children typically as they enter adolescence. So I've been wondering lately whether we're coming to the end of childhood. Childhood really only began in the 1870s as an idea. We had children before then, of course, but in the 1870s, we started to think, what can we do for our children? So we had state schooling. We had things like Christmas invented. I mean, I know we had Christmas, but we had all the paraphernalia of Christmas invented by the British Imperial Christmas Company that wanted us to help to enjoy the way children spent their time in childhood. Nowadays, I think childhood is less protected than it's ever been. Children are more vulnerable than they've ever been. And if we're not careful, childhood will go. Now, do we relish childhood? Do we appreciate it? Do we love childhood? Do we want our children to have a beautiful childhood? Time was when grown-ups stopped talking when children walked in the room so that children didn't hear what they were talking about. Time was when people didn't swear in front of children. Time was when some people didn't drink alcohol in front of children. Time was when you were talking about somebody being seriously ill, you went quiet when children came in. If you were telling a risque joke, you stopped when children came in. You finished it later. Nowadays, children see grown-ups behaving in ways that they've never been encouraged to behave. And then they've got these big things coming up behind them. You know, no matter where you live in Wales, county lines are still there. It's still rumbling through the system. It doesn't get talked about as much as before COVID, but it's still happening. If you live in some parts of Wales, you might think you're out of radicalisation. You know, children won't get radicalised, but that access to that internet is a real challenge for all our children. I was in a Welsh school very early one morning last term, a secondary school, and the children were arriving, and I just stood there thinking, this is so different from even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because almost every child was walking around looking at their mobile phone or their tablet or whatever, and they were not talking to each other. They were just looking at this thing and tapping and moving it around. Years ago, schools used to worry about children getting in gangs or groups in the playground. Now schools worry about isolation. Their only contact is with these influences, and some of those influences are negative influences going forward. These are the challenges we face, and typically society has said what we need to do is avoid low participation and low attainment. We want them to be highly developed in terms of schooling so that they can cope with life, and this is the awful end of life. So how do we help them to avoid this? I'm sorry, but you will not avoid that on one lesson of PHSE a week. Well-being has to be built into the way children see school. They have to see grown-up. Most teachers, I don't know a teacher who's not a decent person wanting the best for children. And the same for teaching assistants and lab technicians and people like that. The more they connect with those people, the more those people connect with the children, the better. So what do our systems in schools do to encourage our grown-ups to spend time with our children in a productive way, as people who are guiding them and helping them? Or do we get into a situation where the systems beat it and stop that working? Many, many children need help in understanding what the signals are. You know, if you're feeling lonely and haven't got much confidence, you feel great when the big bully type comes and gets you and says, do you want to be in my team? Do you want to be in our gang? You feel great, and they let you do things with them, and they enjoy being with you, and you enjoy being with them. And then they say, on the way home, do you want to go in the shop and just bring out some sweets for us? A bit of shoplifting. If you're the child, you've got to pick the signal up earlier. Not be the one that picks it up at that moment and then has the dilemma of, do I do this and lose my friends, or not do it and get beaten up? You've got to get somebody helping you to see your way through these things and going forward. And of course it comes out in lessons. It's bound to come out in lessons. There'll still be teachers who know about French or Welsh or business studies or art or religious education, who help us to see the joy of their subject, the discipline of their subject, but at the same time, those teachers should be connecting me to the big world and warning me about some of the pitfalls and horrible things. And that's why the curriculum isn't just the lessons. So if you're in a school where the leader of the school shows you the curriculum is all mapped out in the lessons and we've got it all chalked up into the timetable, the curriculum is more than the lessons. The curriculum is what children do in the events of the school. So the sporting events, the musical events, the plays, the performances, what they do on residential visits, what they do on day visits, what they do when a visitor comes into the school, the opportunities you give them to charitable work, all those events. But it's also the day-by-day experience children get in. From the minute they enter the door, or even before they enter the door, when they're walking around school, when they're having their lunch. What does lunch say to the children? About spending time together, enjoying healthy meals, spending time in a sort of setting that gets us feeling good. Most children I meet in Welsh schools are incredibly nice people. They just need time to be together to get on better. You see relatively little bad behaviour, but often they're on a sort of route march through the day in a great hurry to get to the end of it because we've shortened it and there's no time, so then they can't mess around. You know, maybe they'd be better messing around in school than finding other things to do on the way home. How do we encourage children to feel part of a community where they can make a big difference? So learning in lessons is just part of the curriculum, not the whole of the curriculum. So when we talk about the curriculum, the staff show you what's planned out for the lessons, or the themes, or the topics, or the projects, or the route to GCSE. Say, yeah, that's great, that's the formal lesson bit. What about the rest of the curriculum? And it's not just a break to go on a residential visit, it's not social and recreation, it's a chance to make science come real, or history come real, or geography come real. It's a real chance to move that curriculum forward. So teachers need encouraging to use every moment, every opportunity to get stuck in with these children and make a difference, because expertise should spread right across the school. So if you're in a school where the maths team stay in their room all the time, doing their maths preparation, and the geography team are over here doing their preparation, but they never meet each other, well, that tell the children about how areas of learning work together. What opportunity are we missing to chat about maths in the corridor? And how do we get teachers to commit to every moment being important in the school for the children? These are all the curriculum. If our children are practising for a concert, or on a study visit at an aeroplane manufacturer, or if they're in the library, browsing, choosing a book, some people say, well, they're not in the curriculum then, are they? They're in the library. No, they're in the library, learning how to be discerning, how to make the right choice, how to get the right book for them. I don't know about you, but I can spend an afternoon in a bookshop and come out with no book. I'm just reading them, enjoying them. You know you're making progress, you're making development. If they're cleaning the outside of the school in the eco team, can you see with the strimmer? That's the curriculum. They're not just being sent out there because they're busy, they're the sort of people that disrupt lessons. If they're in the nurture room in the top right-hand corner, because they have social, emotional challenges, that's the curriculum. So if you're in a school where the leadership says, oh, here's the curriculum, and for the ones who can't cope, they don't do it, they're in the nurture room. You say, no, when they're in the nurture room, that's the curriculum at the time. If you're just walking around school, like the ones on the second left at the top, that's the curriculum. So what's it feel like to walk around the school? I was in a school this week which said you've got all the lovely strap lines about you're an individual, you count, you matter. And just under that was a poster. Walk on the left, do as we tell you, don't do this, don't do that. The contradiction is massive. So how do we mean that? Or is that just put up for Estate and governance? How do we get people to really think that this is... When they're doing charitable work, That's about thinking about people less fortunate than ourselves, trying to help them, trying to create a better world, wondering what I can do, and at the same time learning about how to persuade people to part with money, and learning how to count money, how to get it in the bank, how to make interest and giving it to the right people, and seeing what they do with the money. So I'll stop there for a minute and give you a think. Only a minute, in your twos and threes again. You know, where are we in terms of thinking about the curriculum as a big thing, as opposed to a document? The document might be the curriculum, which is on the web or in paper. It's the reality that meets the child that really counts. Have a quick talk about that. Only a minute, to give me a breather and you a breather. Off you go. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. We're having lovely conversations. I've been to a couple of tables who sort of beckon me, and they say, "Oh yeah, we like that, we like that." But it's really hard because there are some children who don't like sitting in lessons, and we haven't got the flexibility to let them out because of the money, which is absolutely right. If you did a survey and asked the children how many of you like sitting in lessons 5 a day with a break every hour, you might need more money because you'd find a lot though. And I'm not saying it should be easy, and I think lessons are really good. You know, I'm not against having lessons, but I do think we've got to think again about how we use time and therefore how we use people. I go into schools where the same lesson is being done in 3 successive classrooms. They planned it together, and they're all doing it together. And to be honest, it wouldn't matter how many's in the room because the same PowerPoint is on in each room, and the teacher's simply working through them, and the children are like you are at the minute. So would there be a better way of using time to enable people to be more flexible? What we've got into, if we're not careful, is a system, and Graham wrote about all of this. What we've got into is a system where it looks good on paper because we've got spreadsheets showing everybody's deployed, but the fact is they're deployed inefficiently if we're looking at how learning can... Now, I know unions say also, in a class, I personally look at, averages, really looking at it properly, rather than the simple... What the unions worry about most of all is that the teacher gets loads of marking to do. Well, that means you've got to think about marking them, doesn't it? And you can go on and on and on and think about different things. If we've thought about where the curriculum comes from, and we start with that notion of really solid principles, what are we trying to achieve for our children, the next requirement on governing bodies is about implementation, ensuring it happens. Because one of the things that we know about schooling is we make a decision that this is the curriculum, and a year later we found we didn't do that curriculum. We did most of it, but we didn't do all of it. And the idea is that the governing body and the head teacher must ensure that the adopted curriculum is implemented. That's more than buying the right books, or getting the right IT programs, or getting the right staff. That's about the teaching being as good as it can be. In the document it says these things. I've just highlighted a few words on there so you can sort of see some big words. This is a good technique in your governing body meeting. Everybody's faced with so much paper. Just highlight the words you want them to talk about. You know, enabling each learner to develop the 4 purposes. So remember them, 4 nouns, 8 adjectives. How far are our children becoming confident, independent? Confidence is a strange word, isn't it? Because I can be confident, but actually confident about the wrong things. So how far are they being confident in the way we want? Secures learning that offers the appropriate progression. That's a fascinating thing to look through. So let's just have a look at a few books from Year 1, Year 3, Year 5, Year 7, Year 9, Year 11. And let's see progression in the way children express themselves confidently. Or are they doing formulaic work where they're just putting in the odd word now and again in a templated lesson? Now I'm doing some work, as James said, across lots of schools, nearly all the schools in EAS. It's absolutely fascinating to see the way when you get teachers really focused on progression, they get very interested in it. One of the big things has been about this work we're doing, about the way that teachers who teach Year 7, 8 and 9 have spent time in primary schools realising just how important using apparatuses in things like mathematics. They call them manipulatives, things that children manipulate, plastic and stuff like that, concrete and seashells, anything they want. And they realise how important it is to those children that need it, and actually the children grow out of the need for it the more confident they get as mathematicians. We had some lovely comments from secondary teachers saying, our attitude has always been tell the children they can't use them when they come to our school, because when they're a grown-up they can't. So most people here don't sort of turn up at something and when somebody gives you the challenge of adding numbers up, you don't get a box of plastic out and start adding it together. So therefore, they need to stop now. And of course, the teachers have realised if we allow the children to use it, they stop using it when the need finishes. And gradually, most children aren't using this stuff, but it's made a massive difference in the schools that have recognised some children still need this stuff later, and it just helps them a little longer. And actually, it speeds up and makes the lesson more interesting. So this notion of progression for each learner is really important. What the governors can do about that is have conversations about different aspects of pedagogy, different aspects of teaching that enables the 4 purposes. Now this is another good slide for a meeting if ever you want one. The point is that the governors and the leadership, the head teacher and the leadership, can manage the macro, the big issues of pedagogy, and the teachers in the classroom, they manage the micro. That's what they do all day, every day. They manage what I call the weather. If you go in the classroom, you can feel the weather when you go in the classroom. Is it a stormy day today? I don't mean the weather outside, just in the classroom. Is it sunny? Is it just a bit sort of severe today? How does it feel to be in this weather? Teachers have this amazing power in a classroom, really, to create the weather. There's a lovely quote by somebody called Gino who talked about the teacher realising that they create the weather in the classroom. Now, weather exists in a climate, so governors and leadership can create that climate. And there on the right are some of the things that create the climate. How we structure the curriculum creates that climate, which might mean we need to think again about how we use time. There are so many things that you teach in science, for example, that can't be taught in 1 hour. You can't teach about the growth of plants in an hour. You can't put them in and sort of say, well, we'll just stand there till they grow. Right? You need to take time to do it. If you're really watching how things develop and grow, you need a few minutes regularly, but some experiments take a very long one. If you're learning languages, how much chance have you got if you go into a room where 29 other people can't speak it either, and only one can? and you've got to do it for an hour. Now, that's an old model. Are there better ways of learning languages that would help us to get more fluent and more easy with the language more quickly? Because the teacher who's got 30 people who can't speak the language, the only person in the room can do it, can only keep going for so long, so they end up giving children a printed sheet to fill in. Because you need evidence that you did it in case S didn't come. So you end up with this sort of self-defeating system if you're not careful. Things like how we group our children. Do they have to stay in the same groups all the time? Is it possible to make the groups work differently? The classes work differently? And ALN arrangements. If you're struggling in one aspect of the curriculum, you might need support in that aspect. Does that mean you need support in every aspect of the curriculum? Or is it possible that we can help you to grow and move around? And expectations on pupil attitude and pupil relationship can be set for the school, but what about for the people who can't manage or don't manage or need some special things around physical needs or mental needs or social needs? Or how do we make big decisions about how people get on together, but make it work for everybody? When I was ahead, we only had 3 rules, and even then I was told they were wrong. You don't have to have don'ts apparently in rules. Mine was, don't hurt anybody, don't be lazy. I wonder what the third one was. It was so good I can't remember it. We had 3 rules: don't hurt anybody, don't be lazy, and basically you could say to children, whatever they did that transgressed, you say, what's the rule about not being lazy? Oh, don't be dangerous. That was it. Don't be dangerous. What's the rule about don't be dangerous? And actually, it's quite easy. You can make most things fit that. And you don't have to go around going on about them. You just sort of nicely do it. In this left-hand side, these are the things that are reasonable to leave to a teacher. But having said that, I would ask questions about homework. Because that's the timing thing. Why are we spending time doing all this in homework? So much homework puts children off day work. So what are we doing to make homework exciting, interesting and worth it? This is what Graham said in the report, because when he said we need a new curriculum, he said we need to think about how we teach it. So these are things, I'll yellow some up again for you. How much challenge and effort is there? If you want to do a bit of fun, interview a year 9 at the end of a day for 5 minutes and say how much challenge have you had today? Loads of them will tell you the biggest challenge was getting through to now. The actual challenge in the lessons isn't that great. Partly because the teachers are so desperate to get the evidence in case they're inspected that they need the children to write down the stuff that will feed the machine that's coming later. So we want to make it easy, otherwise we won't have the evidence. A blend of approaches. Graham was talking about blending the teaching so that sometimes it's formal from the front, from a screen, sometimes it's group work, sometimes children work on long-term projects, sometimes children go to a venue and see some of that learning in action in the real world. Then we had COVID, and people started to talk about using the screen and the classroom as the blend. That's not blended learning. Blended is bringing it all together to make sense. Cross-curriculum responsibilities. So it's not all right for a teacher to say, oh, it's nothing to do with me, I'm PE. It's nothing to do with me because I'm year 4. It's about getting every teacher to think that learning matters. Pupils taking responsibility. Follow a child for a day around the school and see how many times they make a decision. I was in a school in England last term, and they had 3 strap lines for their maxim, and one of them was about make your own decisions. And I followed a child for the day, and the only decision, 2 decisions. One decision was, what do I want for dinner? And the other decision was, do I have to do this or not? They didn't make that one out loud. But they didn't make another decision throughout the whole of the day. So how do we get those sorts of things to become real? Collaboration is encouraged. How many children have their work in school assessed as a group? 2 or 3 people do some work together and have it assessed, as opposed to handing in their own exercise book to have it marked. And teachers tell you they'd love to do that, except that they think when the inspection happens, they'll get in trouble for not having every child's work. Where does that come from? From the leadership that is getting itself ready for the next inspection. So how do we really make these pedagogic steps that Graham listed come alive in the new curriculum and take it forward? Now I'm going to do this really quickly, but I talked to heads about this in school, so I thought I'd talk to governors as well. But what happens when you have a curriculum is it can be distorted, it can be coherent. And you have this brilliant vision for your curriculum, and you make a curriculum, so that becomes your planned curriculum. As it moves forward, it becomes the taught curriculum. It comes off the page, off the screen, and the teachers teach it. And that means that the bit that follows that is the experience curriculum. And the real challenge is to make sure that what we planned and had on the paper meets the child. That's the only curriculum that counts, the one that hits the child, the experience curriculum. So as you go down there, you think, well, what might distort it? What we know is that teachers teach whatever's written down, because they always write too much down. That's a really big challenge for governors. How do you keep it small enough to make it taught? Teachers always teach what's tested, what's inspected, what they know about, what they enjoy teaching, and what they think the children will enjoy learning. And they leave the rest out. Because there's so much, you leave it out. Right? I always leave broccoli. Because there's always plenty to eat. And I've never liked it, so I just leave it off. Right? You ever go on holiday and pack your suitcase and come back and think, why did I take all these clothes? Because you haven't worn most of them. So much curriculum planning for teachers that they moan about having not enough time for, they then don't teach it when they've planned it. It's just the reality of life, I think. When they've got the taught curriculum, that then sometimes gets distorted because the teacher's repertoire of pedagogy isn't big enough. It doesn't go back to Drane's 12 principles. They have one way of teaching, and that's got worse since COVID when we use the screen a lot. So I stand here with a clicker, you do the writing, and the children know, oh, when this finishes, we'll have to do some writing, but it'll be all right because they'll give us a printed sheet with the clues on. So how do you get around that in the way we teach? Adherence to the school vision is fascinating. I'm in the middle of a beautiful poem, and suddenly the bell goes, and the children know they're going to be late, and so they grab all the stuff and run off to the next lesson, and you're just coming to the beautiful end of the poem. The school vision stuff is really, really important. Do we believe the vision? Or is that what we put on the wall and take it forward? Right? Leadership conversations are massive. Do leaders say, that was fascinating what you were doing this morning, the way you got that group absolutely engrossed in science, it's absolutely incredible. How did you do it? Tell me how, go and tell teachers in another classroom. Or do leaders say, yes, tick, that passed that criteria, tick, you did that, you did ask some questions, we got a pro forma. The best leaders are the ones who engage with teachers all the time, and that distorts the curriculum if they don't. One of the things that are coming out of Eston inspection is that the best schools are places where leadership, head teachers, are closely involved in classrooms. Not walking around with clipboards checking things are happening, but being in the classrooms, talking with teachers, talking with children, making learning matter in the way they have conversations, telling teachers in history, guess what I just saw in art? Telling teachers in year 4, you should see what's going on in early years. And then there's a whole routine and ritual. That's the timetable, because we think we have to have a timetable because we did when our grannies went to school. So we really still need one because the school ran on the timetable. The one thing you all got was a timetable. Until we start really thinking about timetable, we've got a problem. Another one is the photocopier. That's a recent arrival. I heard about workload earlier. One of the reasons teachers are sort of tired is they're having to get up earlier to get in the photocopying queue. And there's this feeling that if your photocopies aren't hot when you get in the classroom, they're not fresh. Children aren't learning them. So we've got to do something about that. And then learner disposition is a big one. You can plan the most exciting piece of teaching and as a teacher, and you get everything ready, and through the door comes one child whose disposition to learning isn't good enough. They're going to wreck it, they're going to spoil it, they're going to knock it over, they're going to be a nuisance. And so you go, oh, it's all right, we just do crayoning. You take yourself away from the really big stuff and do something simple. Now they're a conversation for governors. How far does this document see itself in reality in the classroom? Let's have a look at a few books and see whether what was in the document came out as being exciting. They're not challenging and threatening and horrible. Just let's have a look, because if it's not working, we can do something about it. And if it is working, we'll celebrate it and take it forward. So I thought you might like an idea for schools from children, just to liven it up a bit. Our idea for schools. This is 2 14-year-olds who gave me this in Plymouth when I'd done a conference for teenagers. Our idea for schools. We think schools should have keypads, like the ones on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. If you don't get it, press the green button. If you're bored, press the red button. If you understand it, press the white one. And if you don't care, press the blue one. So you have all these lights in the ceiling. Look, you've got blue ones here, you don't care, right? As you press the buttons, the teacher gets immediate feedback. You don't need testing, you get immediate feedback, right? And you know whether your teaching's working. It's a really good idea, isn't it? That's a great idea, I think. And the teacher gets it. Oh, look, they don't care. Oh, they're getting it at the board. Right? The bit that follows it's a bit. Teachers laugh when I put this up. Right? Look at the bit that follows it. If boredom goes past 50%, the teacher will get a small electric shock. And it is daft, but actually there's something in it that's immediate. I'm not for a minute proposing it, but actually, wouldn't it like... Can you imagine you're teaching and the boredom lights are coming on, right? And you think, blimey, I'll have to teach harder, right? And then the more boredom lights come on, and then, oh no, I'll have to teach faster, I'll have to teach stronger. And then it gets up to sort of 48%, oh, go, blow it, and then you're back to square one. You could think, instead of teaching harder, faster, stronger, you could think, what do we need to do to make this capture the children better? How do we do those things that Graham was on about? Give them more responsibility, get them to collaborate, give them tasks that matter, give them something that really... Maybe some of the really hard things you have to learn in a routine way would make sense if you could see where it fitted and where it went. So on to the next bit, just moving forward. The next thing in the guidance is that you have to keep the assessment arrangements under review. And again, that's the head and the leadership of the school and the governors working together. And where necessary, revise it. Now, loads of schools have their sort of notion of when we're going to test the children. One of the good things in schools is that leaders of schools and teachers are working out that assessment does not mean testing all the time. The test is fine, but not all the time. And that assessment means constantly looking at children's progress and getting them to look at it. The best assessment is where the person does it for themselves. It's called Ipsitu assessment. It means I realise, you tell me I'm really good, and underneath I think, oh, come on, you're having me on, I know I'm not good at this. Or you tell me you're not really good, and I think, actually I am, I'm going to show you. Oh, inside me I make the decision. But actually teachers can reinforce and help that in the best way possible if they take responsibility. Now, you must have seen this as principles for progression, and that links into the assessment process. The blue one, understanding of the ideas and the disciplines within each area of learning, that is about, have you got the understanding, have you got the ideas? And the rest of them, in effect, are about really using the curriculum. Are children making the connections, the purple one? Are they becoming more effective as a writer, as a reader, as a mathematician, as an artist? I suppose that's a sort of testable one. But are they building an increasing depth of knowledge? Are they seeing where that knowledge fits to other things? And are they getting a growing understanding of how their skills transfer to other areas and move us across? Now, this is a really important one. This is work that James and I are doing with clusters. And the clusters are working together. If you're a governor in any school involved in that, and most of them are, ask how that's going in the governing body meetings. That's what we're involved in, because some of it is absolutely fascinating. So there's a picture of an insect look. The top one's done by year 5, and the others down the bottom are done by year 7. We ought to be able to see increased sophistication, increased development, not just in the art, but in the scientific appreciation and understanding the observation skills. These are done by the same child, look, David, who's in reception, and they've got an ostrich feather, a peacock feather. And the first go is David's, and the second one is David's, when he's had some talk about what he's done, not only with his teacher, but with the children. And he's done that thing about, being absolutely focused talk, where you're clear what it is that might make it better, and it's kind, it's nice, it's, why don't you try this? And I think you can see progress relatively quickly on that. This is a reception class as well, doing a little drawing of a bird. A bit hard to see on here, so I'll move it on, but the bottom one is their third go. The teacher's not written, the teacher's written that, not the child. This is from a school in your area, where the cluster have chosen one book called Flotsam. It's a very popular book in primary schools at the minute. And they've used that book to observe children in different year groups doing some writing about aspects of the book. So look, child A, child B, child C, child D. And all the schools in the cluster have got together with all their 4 examples and talked about how are your children compared to our children. We're not on that old moderation thing about where you show only your best and try and prove you're all right. This is really exploring children's writing. Can you see the comments written on there? This is year 2, the same cluster. And you can see, I mean, you can't read it from where you are, I guess, but just the volume of writing. Not that volume is everything. Short poems are often better than long ones. Really getting children to looking at their sentence constructions and the way they're using vocabulary and so on, up to the year 5s and the way they're talking. The teachers' comments are probably more important than the writing. What are the teachers deducing, bringing out of this, talking about and so on? When this cluster gets together to talk, it's really quite exhilarating to see the way they're investigating children's work in order to work out how to help them in the future. So I'm trying to offer you perspectives. What do you think of these? These are year 5 children. I mean, is that art or is that maths? Or is it confidence building? Or is it detail? They're quite nice, aren't they? There's the pictures for year 5. And then the last bit is ensuring the curriculum. And this is what you have to do for each learner. Secure the learning, 6 areas, mandatory elements. You must make sure all those bits are in. And it's not all right to say, well, we do well-being, we do that every 3rd Thursday for an afternoon, unless the structure for what we do for well-being is really confidently addressing some of those issues I was talking about previously. Some more perspectives, there you go. This is children's art and science work together here, look. So these children do about the circulatory system, and that's a bit easier to see. It's pretty good artwork, isn't it? But actually it's the scientific work that we're really bothered about. They've done 3D modelling on the top right. This is year 6, 11-year-olds, oldest primaries. So if you look at some of the writing, which I've tried to blow up so you can actually read it, the function of our heart is to pump blood, carrying nutrients and oxygen to every part of the body. Our heart is split into 4 chambers. It's pretty good writing, recording what they've done. But it's not that formulaic writing where everybody writes the same and takes it. They're pretty good drawings, aren't they, for 11-year-olds? Drawing the heart's really hard because you can't sort of get them. The heart is split into 4 chambers, the atrium, the left ventricle, the right atrium, and so on. Every part of the body. You can see how they go. I'm just trying to show you pictures of it as we go forward. What does exercise do to the heart? Sorry, I thought the writing was next to it, which is why I pressed it. When done regularly, both moderate and vigorous physical activity can strengthen all your body to increase and so on. And what you've got is children being able to express. So you could look at the science and make decisions about the writing, and you can look at the writing and make decisions about whether they understand the science as you go forward. There is a difference for year 10 and 11 because the influence of GCSEs comes in there. So governors in the guidance are told what has to be there. But each learner in year 10 and 11 has to do all areas of learning. So it's not, oh, well, they're not doing an exam on that, so we'll leave that out. What Graham was talking about was minimising the extent to which the exam dominates as we go forward. The only difference for this cohort is the 2 areas there, so the religion and the sex education elements going forward. And one of the things about ensuring it happens is looking at new surroundings. I thought you might just bear with me on this for a bit. This is new surroundings. When you go to secondary school, for example, transition is a key area. I want just 30 seconds, because we'll run out of time if we don't. 30 seconds with the person next to you. What do you remember was strange, odd, hard to come to terms with when you first went to secondary school? I forgot. Very, very quickly. Okay, here we go. I don't know what you said. I've been looking around the room and there's sort of a load of people who are laughing. Like when I went to secondary school, oh, this was awful, and now after a bit I realised it wasn't. There's another lot of people pulling faces, like, oh. I mean, I had terrible memories. I didn't have a very good school career, but one thing, every Wednesday I worked out, after a little while, you got fish. And at the time I didn't like fish, especially because it was in this sort of rubbery batter, and you had no choice in those days, it was so long ago. And this fish came out, and the first week I said, no thanks, I don't like fish. And the woman behind me said, you have fish, and you eat your fish. So I sort of gagged on it, it was horrible. Happened again the second week, third week, I thought, oh, it's fish on Wednesdays, isn't it? I've worked this out now. Right? So then I started being naughty in classrooms just before dinner time. Because then you get kept back, and you'd miss the fish. Can you see? But there's a limit to how long you do that without getting in big trouble. Alright? Then I started being ill, just leading into the diet. Oh! God. There's a limit to how many times you can be ill at 12:01 on the... You see what I'm about? So in the end, I came up with a solution, which was to take a handkerchief, put it on your lap. When the fish came out, you lobbed it in, put it in there, and put it in your pocket. I've still got a scar just there. No, serious, it's a big scar. And then I used to wait until the end. I used to move stuff around on the plate. We would say, well done. It's really burning by now. Then it went cooler. After lunch, I used to go down the field, and when nobody was looking, I threw the lot in the hedge. I'm the only teenager you'll have met that wanted handkerchiefs for Christmas. Handkerchiefs, I mean, these were just going. And still to this day, I always carry a handkerchief in case I can't eat the food. It's serious stuff, right? Not only that, I never blow my nose on a Wednesday afternoon. But what I'm saying is, you really, as governors, remember the curriculum is not just the lessons, it's the events, the routines. Here's what children, I've done loads of surveys on transition. These are what 11-year-olds found the most difficult. Clothing, belongings and equipment. What are we doing? Do you know, they get in trouble because they haven't got their clothing. They've never had to sort this. In secondary schools, so many treat year 11s the same way as they treat year 13. The same rules, the same food, the same everything, the same breaks, the same, you know, it's really funny. Rules and trivia. You walk around if you're in a secondary school, there's rules everywhere. The only thing you do is break rules. You'll be really successful at it because there's so many of them. You're bound to get one wrong. And these are lovely things. The no-go areas are fascinating. Walk around the average secondary school and within 5 minutes I can find you some no-go areas. They're the places that the staff agreed. Not they haven't agreed it in a meeting, but nobody goes there and the children know that the staff don't go there. And they're just places that have become no-goes. Not in a nasty way. They find the timetable bizarre. They don't like writing at speed when they're 11. Some primary teachers typically give them longer to write. In secondary school, the teacher says, just jot this down. Oh, he's off again. Right? What are we going to do about that? Maths in the afternoon. In primary schools, they do English and maths all morning because they do them when they're fresh. Right? I can understand this. So you never do design technology when they're fresh. Then or PE. But when you go to secondary, they still keep doing art in the morning. I'm too fresh for art. They find it really hard. And suddenly they realised that in primary schools they were doing all right, and there's 170 in the year in secondary, and I've suddenly worked out where I am. And that's really hard to come to terms with for some children. Even the ones who are doing really well, I suddenly find that they're at the front of a long cross-country race, doing well, and other children, anyway. They can't understand the incentive schemes. They've had some of them at primary school, and detention is a world apart. There's a question, why do we still do that? Primary school children don't need detention. 6 weeks later, it's just run of the mill, it's a day. Well, if you want a problem, keep your problem. But don't moan about it. You know, the primary system doesn't have detention. If you're a governor, ask when they show you the detention figures. I was in a school in the Midlands recently. Friday afternoon, I was talking to the deputy head, looked in a window and there was a little group of children. I said, oh, is it a club? She said, no, it's detention. So I added it up. I said, 27 in detention? She said, yeah, 27. You don't know the alphabet. There's 3 more classrooms, yeah. Because half of them are having to come to detention on Friday to do double detention because they haven't come to detention in the middle of the week. So I said, you better change the logo on the side of the school. Because it says, everybody's successful every day. So what that means, something different, isn't it? It means most people successful most days. Now that would be a really different logo, wouldn't it? But why do you have detention? I don't know. Custodial assemblies. In primary schools, children sit around, and teachers sit around the edge and sing with them. Go to secondary, you sit in your chairs, and the grown-ups stand around the edge like this. Now that's really odd for your 11, because what are you going to do? You didn't come in here to cause bother. All right? Teacher consistency becomes a game. How different teachers are. And if you've got an older child who's already been to the school, you know half the wrinkles already. If you're in a secondary school, at the moment there'll be a competition going on between year 7s to see who can get the most detentions in a year and who can not get a detention during the year. How do you keep it going and how do you stop it? So you might like to do this, which is get year 6 to write to year 7, these from local schools, where the children write to the teachers in year 7 and say, this is what I'm looking forward to. And when they've been in year 7, to write back to year 6 and say, this is where we're. And lastly, you should keep it under review. Whatever you do, make sure that happens. And these are some of the things I've been talking about that might be worth looking at in terms of taking the whole thing forward. So if you're a governor, do look for progression. Focus on the youngest children, year 7, reception, nursery, any key stage, the youngest children. The blend of learning in its widest sense, the routines, events and so on. And lastly, at the bottom, just ask about photocopying costs. Because the amount of money spent on photocopying to stick pieces of paper in a book you've already paid for, if you multiply that across the EAS region, that's a phenomenal amount of money. And if we want children to learn about saving the planet and saving trees and be eco-warriors, you don't do that by chopping down trees to put either side of a piece of paper in an exercise book. And I'm very worried because I've gone over time, but I do want to show you this to finish with. Another thing governors could do is to just try and get the children to exhibit their work. In school is good. Across the cluster, going to the secondary school would be even better. Take their work, put it up on display. This is some schools I work with in Bristol. This is secondary school efforts. But here you go with some children in primary schools, just talking to parents about what they've done and how they've done it. And
so now we did perspective where we did a horizontal line and a vertical line. As you can see, some of the vertical line and a path of some trees. We did some scenery too to get some accessories like that in our art. And we basically actually enjoyed this experience and learning some artistic skills. And if you come over here, we also learned some artistic skills and how intricate this parrot is. Because Jarvis kept records of his exploration, including diagrams, pictures of all the animals that he found out. And we were taking a step in that by exploring some of our own animals and see what we can find about them too. So we were acting like Darwin for a little bit of time, learning from him and how he actually lived there back then. And we also did some evolution, so how humans will evolve in the future. And yeah, we did some couple of some and we also done microscopes and we also in the path of Darwin too. Well, that's about it for you.
And that's it, all right? Is she articulate? Is she getting there? She's year 5. Is she the sort of learner you want in your school? Give her opportunities, you never know. Who's shaping the future? The children you are a governor for. Look, you are important people. You do incredible things. The best thing you can do is keep a conversation going in your school about how we're doing the right thing for our children against the principles we've set for those purposes for Welsh education. You really matter, and the children that you work with may not know you, but they will look back for years to go and thank you if we get the schooling system right. Thanks for listening to me. Cheers.